Hello, everyone, and welcome into my NBA discussion for May 12th. After that huge Game 5 last night from the Boston Celtics and the Milwaukee Bucks series, I actually chose to stay up and watch this even though I'm in Spain, so I'm 7 hours ahead, which means I was up till around 4 a.m. I'm definitely still kind of feeling that decision right now, but I wouldn't have changed it for the world. What an incredible game to watch as a Bucks fan. This really felt like Boston's game. The entire game, even though the Bucks were able to hang in it every time that Boston made a run. You had the crowd in it, they were on the road, but the Boston crowd was really, really tough. And it just felt like Boston's game. Boston actually played, for the most part, I think, really, really good basketball. There was a point where Jaylen Brown hit like 3 shots in a row, very, very tough shots. And at that point, I was kind of like, okay, this is just their game. It doesn't feel good. And when the crowd gets into it, you know how hard that gets. It really reminded me in a lot of ways of Game 5 of the NBA Finals last year against the Phoenix Suns. It played out in a similar way, how the Bucks got down really big early and they were able to come back. In that Phoenix game, they actually came back with a lead in the second half. But they both ended on similar ways. A Jrue Holiday steal, a huge, huge clutch steal at the end, and the defense that Jrue Holiday played down the stretch. I don't think it can be overstated that was the difference in the game. I was actually quite critical for the most part of Jrue's game. I thought that he was being really selfish. I didn't like the shot selection, especially in the first half. It just seemed like he was playing a little out of control. There were turnovers. And I was a little frustrated because, as I said in that last video, Jrue Holiday was going to be the difference. With Chris Middleton out, they need another scorer to step up. And Jrue did it on both sides. He scored some timely threes at the end, and obviously the defense on Marcus Smart on the last 2 possessions for Boston. Just incredible. I'm still having trouble, realizing that this actually happened, because if the Bucks go down 3-2, even though, Game 6 being back in Milwaukee, I just don't like the idea of a Game 7. So this really felt like a must-win game for the Bucks, and the fact that they were able to find a way when it really felt like all hope was lost a couple different times. I mean, the Al Horford putback dunk, the crowd is in a frenzy. It just feels like Boston has, it's their night. It just that's the best way I can put it. It felt like Boston had their night, and somehow the Bucks still won. So now going back to Milwaukee with a 3-2 lead, that's a complete game changer. And they really need to win this Game 6. I think that, going back to Boston for a Game 7, after the way that this game ended, Boston's going to be hungry. It's not going to be an easy Game 6. They're going to want to bring it back to their home court where their fans are so tough. So I really feel like the Bucks have to close it out in 6 games. I felt the same way last year in the finals when we came back for Game 6 against the Suns. It's the same concept. You can't give up home court when you have it. And even though Boston's going to be gunning for, a comeback after that performance, I feel like there is going to be a little bit of a hangover effect in the fact that the emotions were riding so high for Boston. And then in the course of 2 or 3 minutes of gameplay, it's all just snatched away. That's going to have a mental effect on them. You got to take advantage. The Bucks smell blood in the water, and I think that they will win that Game 6, but it's a must-win. I don't like the idea of going back to Boston for a Game 7. So as for my picks for 2 nights ago, not great, huh? I mean, I actually did get the Phoenix Suns pick pretty accurate, but I thought it was going to be a closer game. Phoenix absolutely ran away with it. I think you saw basically, they had the home court advantage, Dallas in Games 3 and 4. They used it to their advantage. They got the crowd into it. The Suns seemed frustrated a lot at times, especially on offense. And they just could not find a way to slow down Luka. When they finally did try, he had other options open. So it was a completely different story in Game 5. Phoenix just dominated, and I think at this point they're going to close it out. As for the other game, I went out on a limb a little bit, and I guess there's a lesson in here. Maybe you should just stick to your original picks, because originally I had Heat in 5, and I kind of switched that around after Games 3 and 4 looked so convincing for Philly with Joel Embiid back. But wow, massacre, absolute massacre in Miami. Miami Heat taking the 3-2 lead. I don't see Philly coming back from this. They just didn't look like the same team. Give a lot of credit to Miami. They were able to neutralize Joel Embiid as an offensive threat, holding him to 17 points, and then James Harden to 14 points. I mean, if those 2 guys aren't scoring above 20 for you, there's not a lot of hope for Philly. And I just feel so bad for Embiid sometimes. I mean, it just seems like, and everyone kind of calls him soft too, but some of the hits that he takes, he got a hit to the face, and keep in mind, this guy's got a broken face. He's got a broken orbital bone. I can't imagine how painful that is to take a shot right on that mask. It's just not looking good for Philly. I think Heat close this out. Heat in 6. I originally thought Heat in 5. I should have just sticked with that pick and not reverse course on that. But, who knows? If Philly is that different team at home versus on the road, bringing it to a Game 7's always going to be interesting. But I think Miami's just too good. They're too solid. And this is a roster where they're not too focused on one or two guys. I mean, it's a very solid roster. Basically, the 7 or 8 guys that are on the court are all capable of scoring at any time and playing fantastic defense. So I'm thinking Miami's got this series. And then the last series that we have to talk about is Golden State and Memphis. I predicted that Golden State would close it out in Game 5, even though it was in Memphis. With Ja Morant out, and we've now learned officially that he's going to be out for the rest of the series with that bone bruise, I just really didn't think there was any chance for Memphis to get back in this series. I was wrong. They looked pretty good last night, and I don't think that anyone, I certainly didn't predict it, but I don't think anyone else predicted it either. Memphis winning by over 30 points over Golden State. So now that's something to watch. I mean, going back to San Francisco for Game 6, you got a little momentum riding. In the last 2 games, even without Ja Morant, Memphis has showed that they are capable of competing with this team. So they got to win 2 more, but the Game 7 would be at home. So that is something to keep in mind. I still think Golden State takes the series. I'm not going to switch my pick on that just because of one game, but it was surprising and it was convincing by Memphis, taking advantage of that home court and just absolutely destroying the Golden State Warriors last night. That's about all we got right now. I will talk later in the week as we head towards the conference finals. We're getting close to the end of all of these series. It's been so fun to follow because it's been so tight. I mean, every single one of these series, especially now that Golden State and Memphis is a little bit more of a competition, every single series has had its moments. Every single series has been intriguing. And both teams have had their moments in each series, which is what you want to see, especially when, you kind of get down to the nitty gritty of the best teams in the NBA. The competition level is high. The intensity is high. That's the one thing I thought was interesting last night when I was watching the Bucks and Celtics game. I almost kind of felt like there was a lack of intensity in the first half from both teams. And that seems strange after such a physical Game 4. And even Game 3, for the most part, was very, very physical. I mean, especially, with Giannis driving to the hole and the Boston Celtics trying to draw those charges, a lot of times flopping, in my opinion, but that's a whole nother discussion. It just felt so physical on both ends. And last night, the energy felt a little different. So I was almost wondering if both teams are a little fatigued at this point from, just how much energy has been exerted over the past 5 games now. So that's something to watch going into Game 6. I mean, is Giannis going to run out of gas now that he's having to do so much? 40 points last night, 11 rebounds. Without Chris out there, he has to do a lot of work. And that's the one thing I've been observing is that, when he's driving, if he's driving every time, just think about the physical amount of energy that takes. It's a lot more than just like a lot of these new players that have come into the league and they shoot a lot of threes, they do a lot of step back moves. That conserves energy. When you're driving to the hole and you have to be physical and you have to show your strength against the defender, it's a different story. So that's something that I'm looking for going into Game 6. Is Giannis's energy level going to be able to sustain? But it has for the most part. I mean, name one point in the series where Giannis hasn't been on point, besides maybe Game 1 where he wasn't as efficient from the field. But last night, 59% from the field on 40 points. Really, really incredible. And that's including some not so smart shots. I mean, he took some threes that I don't think were necessary. He took some jump shots, mid-range jump shots that I don't think were necessary. I don't think he has to take those unless they're wide open, which sometimes they kind of try to bait him into doing that. But to be 59% from the field and put up 40 points and miss a couple threes, miss a couple jump shots, pretty impressive from Giannis last night. And he's going to be obviously the X factor going into Game 6. It's going to be interesting to see how Boston kind of responds from this. I mean, that's got to be just emotionally devastating to feel like you're at home, you have all the energy, you're going to go up 3-2 going back to Milwaukee with a chance to win the series, and then all of that is ripped away from you in the final 3 minutes of gameplay. Jrue Holiday, man, I mean, this guy, I don't know why more people don't talk about him every year for Defensive Player of the Year. I think it's just because he does it in such a non-flashy way, but he plays such solid defense all game long. And, when he has to have these tough matchups, sometimes guys that are a lot bigger than him are matching up on him. He's able to keep them in check. And then it's the clutch defense for me. I mean, thinking back to his huge steal on Devin Booker last year in the finals, You can name a lot of other steals within that playoff run as well that were pretty big and pretty timely. Now he has some more to add to that shelf when he retires. Two of the biggest steals in Bucks history last night, and just awesome to have it happen against Marcus Smart too, who was being a little talkative all game. That's all I'm going to say about that. He's definitely trying to juice up the Bucks a little bit, but it's so great to get those steals on him from Jrue. And I'm really proud of Jrue Holiday. I mean, he's come a long way from where he was in New Orleans. And in my humble opinion, I think he's one of the greatest, at least for guards, he's one of the greatest defenders in this league. And it's going to be interesting to see how this series goes from here, because now that he's fired up, now that the Bucks have this advantage, I think it's going to be really hard for Boston to come back from this. Final observation before I head out, I'm actually going to the Real Madrid Levante game tonight, which I'm so excited about. It's my first real big European soccer experience, so truly over the moon about that. And we're going to talk more about European soccer in the next few weeks on this channel. So what I observed from the Bucks is it seems like, people always talk about Budenholzer and his adjustments and is he making enough adjustments. I thought he made a lot of adjustments last night, and one of the biggest ones, one of the most noticeable ones, was every time that Boston had a big bucket, especially down the stretch, the Bucks ran right away and tried to get a bucket in transition. I think the thinking behind this is, first of all, the first one's pretty obvious. You're trying to take the crowd out of it. And there was the point where Giannis hit the three right after Boston had a big three, and it kind of just quieted the crowd from there. It happened like 2.5 seconds after the Boston three, really quick possession. I think the idea of, pushing it up the court so aggressively after a big bucket is to make sure momentum doesn't get too much on their side, but also because the Bucks play so well in transition. I mean, I think that's one of the areas where the Bucks excel the most, is when they are in transition. And obviously when you got Giannis running downhill, it's very hard to stop him unless you can get in front of him and draw a charge. But then you also have guys like Connaughton, Grayson Allen, and now Bobby Portis, who's been playing a little bit better as of late. When they're open in the corner for three, that is so dangerous too. You got to watch them. You can't just all collapse on the paint for when Giannis drives. So I thought a fantastic adjustment for Bud, and Bud doesn't get enough credit when he does something like that, because everyone just kind of has this narrative of like Bud doesn't make adjustments. He makes adjustments. Sometimes they don't work out and sometimes they're not as noticeable, but last night that was something that I noticed through the whole game. The Bucks really, really pushed it up court aggressively, especially after big Boston buckets. So that's how I'm going to leave it. Let's see what happens tonight between the Miami Heat and the Philadelphia 76ers. I expect the Heat to close this one out, but if we get a Game 7, obviously never complain about Game 7. The best two words in sports. And the other series as well, I mean, I don't think that at this point Dallas is going to have much in them after just getting blown out in Phoenix, but who knows? I mean, they've been a very different team in Dallas than they have been in Phoenix. And Luka Doncic is Luka. I mean, he's always due for a 40, 50-point game, so you just never know what's going to happen, and especially having that home crowd back. I'd love to see a Game 7. That's something that I said in the last video. If I had to pick one Game 7, and I'm obviously not going to pick the Bucks one because I'm a Bucks fan. I don't want to see a Game 7, especially at this point. But if I had to pick one of the Game 7 for these series left, I would love to see Dallas and Phoenix in Game 7. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Phoenix closes it out tonight, but let's follow that. That's going to be interesting. Golden State and Memphis tomorrow night, and then a huge Game 6 in Milwaukee between, I know I'm biased, but I think that we can all agree it's been the best series so far in the conference semifinals. Boston Celtics, Milwaukee Bucks, Game 6 tomorrow night. We'll be talking about it, and I'll see you very soon.